The world is changing. We are amidst a technological revolution, affecting the way we engage with our work. The democratization of technology has allowed the masses access to software that was once only available to a privileged elite. What does this mean for the production of media?
In the early 1980s, I remember going and filming in Bolivia with a cameraman, assistant cameraman, a researcher, a production assistant, an interviewer, sound recordist, and then probably there we hired a driver. There was a huge team of us, and making a documentary for the BBC. And that's how you did things.
The biggest change I've seen in the last, say, 15 years is editors being unshackled from the traditional environment, which used to be a cutting room when it was film and videotape with big machines, these huge video machines, being unchained from that, and computerization has brought the cost down.
I went back 20 years later to follow up that story once I'd finished at the BBC and I'd set up Scottish Screen and had finished there, to find the person I'd made the story about, the tin miner. And I went back with a colleague who spoke Spanish, so she was my translator. We both used the camera and did the sound, and we made a film following up what we'd done. And for me, that was a sort of huge transitional moment of realizing that you could actually do it yourself.
The rise of third-party software-centric equipment are now putting a pressure on companies that once held a monopoly on the media marketplace.
In 2000, it was $20,000 for an Avid Media Composer, and you need special hardware. And then what came along was Apple's Final Cut Pro Classic, as it's now called, which is originally called Final Cut Pro 4, 5, 6 and eventually 7, and that was running on a Mac, but it was resolution independent, it didn't need specialist hardware, and that started to change things, that you didn't need to have barrel loads of kit anymore.
This idea of choice, combined with more user-friendly material, has allowed users to focus on the task.
Well, you can say that because you've operated Avid systems. Well, you started off in videotape, and then you moved on to Avid systems, and now you're cutting broadcast quality work on Final Cut Pro X, and there are lots of commercials and corporates and movies that are being cut on Final Cut Pro X as well these days.
Inevitably, and this is certainly true of Adobe Premiere, where the longer something is on the market for, it just gets more and more features. Microsoft Word is another example.
Yes, they keep adding and adding.
So they wanted to start again, and then while they're at it, they thought to themselves, well, what is this film metaphor? What is it? Film, this digital generation, we're analog people, but the digital people, whilst it might be good for old-fashioned people to imagine a source and a record, which was stolen from tape, or a film trim rollers and a bin where you put offcuts and splices. This just doesn't mean anything to people that are just, all they want to do is tell a story. And they want to be able to tell a story by swapping things around, a bit like word processing with pictures, insert, delete, move. And so they came up with this idea of getting rid of tracks and having a storyline. It's just a central storyline that is the backbone of the whole thing.
If you have got the talent, the passion, the creativity, it doesn't matter about the kit. And I used to be the complete opposite. I used to devour technology magazines and was very much, that piece of kit is rubbish and this is brilliant and why would you buy that, and anti-PC and pro-Mac and all that sort of stuff. If you get something and it works for you, great. If you're in a back bedroom, as we started nearly 20 years ago, and you can produce whatever you need to produce, be it music or cutting pictures, putting films together, whatever, and it works for you, and you're producing results that you're happy with, that stimulate you creatively, great.
With the democratization of technology, It has never been easier for the amateur to gain skills for professional production. How has this influx of amateur editors affected the industry?
There's so many tiny microscopic things that make what we do part of a professional environment. Obviously, what makes it professional is someone pays you to do a job with expectations from a creative point of view, with expectations from a technical point of view, with expectations from, 10 years down the line they might want to come back and restore that project and export aspects of it, as we had like literally last week. A TV series that we worked on, just sold it to someone else. They needed new stems that didn't conform to what we did 10 years ago, because obviously things change. If you were working in a bedroom and you were jumping between platform and platform, whatever was new and amazing this year or this month, you couldn't do that. So there are, I suppose there are constraints put upon us by the expectations of a client that they might want to go back and do X, Y, and Z in however many years. Whether that be the software platform we use, hardware that ties in with that, plugins that we use. We still use certain plugins now, or at least variations of that plugin, partly because we like them, partly because we know that we'll have to restore a session that used them however long ago. And all of that, apart from just this room and the infrastructure that supports this room, make it a professional working environment.
With software being readily available, the gates have opened for amateur editing projects, flooding video sharing sites such as YouTube.
Happened in the late 80s into the early 90s when music, there was this huge bedroom, rise of bedroom musicians, and it was, for music studios, was almost a death knell, because suddenly, in the end, dance music was on the rise, and there was this huge rise of people not using studios, and you go fast forward nearly 20 years, and we've got everyone can grab a GoPro and go and be a filmmaker, and that's great. You know what? You didn't have the ability to do that 10 years ago, pre-smartphones. And there'll be a bunch of people who discover that they are talented, and there'll be a far, far larger bunch of people who are producing loads of crap and putting it up onto YouTube. And that's the same as, it's the same as music. You can sit and you can write a piece of music on your phone. It doesn't mean you're a musician, but it means that you can have fun and you can exercise your creativity. You still need talent to write a decent piece of music. You still need talent to create a soundtrack for a feature film. You still need talent to make a feature film. The tools that you use to make that feature film, to write that piece of music, whatever works for you is right for you.
I mean, there's a sort of downside of the democratization, is that people see that it's easy to make something, possibly. You still need a good idea, and you've still got to be able to execute it.
As more people develop skills in competing programs, healthy competition is created.
But we're going through a metamorphosis in software development and equipment development and changes and manufacturers and the competition and the advantages that brings, because you've got high-powered computer systems that can run extremely powerful software, and what that allows people to do is join the game, join the party, and them that never had access now have access.
This helps to push editors who have developed their skills in an amateur environment to enter the professional scene.
There was a group of artists going to China. In the past you might have said, oh, that's a good subject, let's go and follow them. And what I did was I got them a Video 8 camera, because that was the top of the amateur range at the time, and they did a little diary, and so they brought the footage back, and we did interviews with them, and then the program goes through the normal BBC technical checks, and the engineer phoned up and said, look, see this footage you've got here? I mean, they've where we've got better quality footage, couldn't we substitute it? I said, what do you mean? He said, well, they're on the Great Wall of China. The Queen went to the Great Wall of China recently. Why don't we put in our footage of the Great Wall of China? I said, well, that's not the point, really, is it? Because we want their point of view. We want to see how these artists saw it and then the pictures that they made from it. And it was at that point I said to the engineers, look, it's no longer about the search for the perfect picture. You know, it's about the content that matters.
Such sites have also included services for content creators to start generating a revenue from their creations.
I remember when Audio Networks came along. Now, these online music libraries caused a chasm in bespoke composition and commissioning of music for film and TV, because they saw an online marketplace and they could make a lot of money by ease of dissemination, easier access to their data, so that editors and dubbers or directors and producers can just sample the stuff, listen to it, yeah, download it, pay £5 or whatever, or in fact in many cases pay nothing, and the libraries themselves then make the performing rights royalties from that. Now, if you got a piece of work that's in global dissemination, you can be seriously talking about a lot of money. So the first time I saw the reuse of media, apart from film media that comes out of an archive like Pathé or the BBC's archive, was in the continual reuse of music. And I remember sitting at home one day, and it was a Sunday afternoon, and I was on BBC One and this music's playing, and I went, oh, that's Audio Networks, because I recognised it. Okay, what else is on? BBC Two, different programme, same music. Simultaneously, ITV, same music, different programme. That piece of music was on simultaneously on 3 different channels. The way producers are operating now, and there's a local Glasgow company that made a series for BBC Scotland, great series, well received, didn't want to recommission it. They went to ITV with the same rushes, the same shots, and pitched it to ITV. ITV want the programme. Another 6.5 hours, a reversion from the same media. Well, that's good, because it's a different programme, it's a different audience, it's got a different marketplace, and it's still strong material that can tell a different story.
The democratization of media has allowed access for amateurs to compete with professionals. Using the variety of programs now available, what makes one better than the other?
You know, it doesn't matter the platform. You know, you'll have people flying the flag for Apple, or people flying the flag for Avid. You know, people, in terms of our industry, people will work in Nuendo, people will do stuff in Logic, people will do stuff in Ableton, and we work mainly in Pro Tools. But if we want to go and kind of stimulate ourselves and try and create something, and maybe use a different tool to try and generate a different response, maybe you'll pull something into Ableton, or you'll just pull up a soft synth, or you'll process something, and it's just a way of stimulating ideas. It doesn't matter. It really doesn't matter. Most of these bits of kit do essentially the same things, but in different ways. You can achieve pretty much the same results, but you just go a different way.
With the democratization of technology giving the masses access, and the availability of inexpensive, high-quality technology, what was once an elitist area is now seeing an influx of amateurs turned professional. Access to media, changing media production methods, and modern self-broadcasting has changed practices for the large broadcasting centers. This, with dissemination techniques, is showing that the definition and division between professional and amateur is becoming dramatically less defined. In our new era of anyone can have a go media production, media is, for the better, simply no longer elitist.